Hi, my name is Rick Guttersohn, and I'm a self-professed geek and lover of comic book movies. But I also happen to be a grief therapist, a grief professional, social worker who's dedicated the last 9+ years of his life helping people navigate grief and loss and helping people through really hard times. But let's be honest, nobody wants to sit down and listen to a guy talk about grief or hear a talk on grief. The average person isn't comfortable with this topic. So with the movie The Flash coming out in theaters this summer, I thought this would be the perfect time to just take the opportunity to just talk about some really challenging aspects of grief that we all experience in life. Let's talk about this movie, The Flash. Whether you've seen this movie or not, it's based on a comic book called Flashpoint. It's an event that's been covered in a variety of mediums. It originally came out in a comic book form. It's been covered on the CW TV show, The Flash, and also now in this movie that just came out this summer as well. I literally just got home after watching this movie, and it just rocked me to my core enough that I wanted to turn on the camera and just record a video with my thoughts about not so much the movie. This isn't a movie review per se. It's more about the story elements of it. So there are going to be some spoilers to the movie if you aren't familiar with the Flashpoint movie or the Flashpoint concept in the comic books or even what they covered in it with the CW TV show. But I'm not going to be focusing just on the movie as well. But this is a story about Barry Allen. And for those who aren't familiar with Barry Allen, Barry is the regular person name of the Flash, and Barry is someone who, like many comic book characters, has experienced tremendous loss in his life. Barry, at the young age of I think 8 years old, witnessed or was right in proximity to his mother's murder, and to compound that murder or to compound that loss, his father was accused of killing his mother and was sent away to prison. Every story version tells a different kind of variations of this story, but that's kind of the heart of what's going on. So Barry grows up. He later on gets a good job. He decides to commit himself to, I think, forensic science so he can prevent other people being falsely accused of murder, just like his father was. And this event has totally wrecked his life in one aspect of he's an 8-year-old kid, and all of a sudden both primary caregivers in his life are completely gone from his life. The CW TV show kind of talks about his adoption, and this movie really doesn't get into that aspect of it as well, but essentially he's raised by somebody else, but he grows up, he gets a good job. He's kind of transformed by this crazy event where he's struck by lightning in a lab that kind of combines the lightning with these chemicals that splash on him, and all of a sudden he gains these incredible powers. And most people just kind of know the Flash as somebody who can run really fast, but truthfully he gains the ability to do all these other crazy things based on that speed. And as he matures and he grows in his powers, he's really starts to learn that, like, I can do some incredible things. And so without getting super nerdy into all of the comic book lore, he taps into what's called the Speed Force, which allows him to travel back into time. And this principle that the Flash or Barry Allen stumbles across is something that, whether you have superpowers or not, which I'm guessing if you're watching this video, you probably don't have superpowers, but anyone who's experienced a significant loss in their life is often confronted with this question of, like, what can I do with what I've been through? So in my case, part of my grief journey, I lost my mom 9 years ago. One of the things I did to kind of honor her and remember her and to live a life of meaning and purpose in her memory was to serve other people in grief. I worked at a nonprofit for 6 years, helping people in grief. Now I'm doing it individually as a grief therapist. Other people served and came alongside me and comforted me in my grief. And so one of my ways of giving back was to invest the healing and the life experience that I had into the life of other people. I'm a more compassionate person because of what I've experienced going through grief. And I've been able to touch the lives of other people because of the experience that I've had going through grief. And yet I would trade all of that in a heartbeat just to see my mom again, just to connect with her, to see her laugh and hear her crazy, weird jokes. And almost everybody I've talked to has kind of had that same sentiment where they just want to see their loved one again. We don't have the power to make that happen, but Barry Allen does. And this movie highlights that incredible power and that incredible ethical dilemma of, what if I did have the power to go back in time and to change the events so I could have more time with my loved one? And so Barry does that. He goes back into time But the problem is this: he screws everything up. And it's not just as simple and as a clean fix as he thinks it's going to be. And people try to warn him, and that's kind of the theme of this movie. And he starts to learn this lesson of like, what have I given up to try to go back in time? And what else have I screwed up? And over time, whether it's in the comic book, the TV show, or the movie, all of them come to this realization of like, I'm creating more problems than the solutions I'm trying to seek out. And the solution I was trying to seek out isn't actually possible. And the struggle that ultimately Barry comes to the conclusion of is no matter how hard I try, no matter what I do, I have to just accept that this is the journey that I'm on. Because if I'm always trying to go back and fix and trying to control the things that I can't control, I'm going to get stuck, and I'm possibly going to create even more pain and more damage than had I just accepted this in the first place. Any of us who have experienced a loss of a loved one or a significant loss that's a permanent loss know that as much as we try to kind of bring back the old life that we had, we can't. And yet if we don't accept this new life without that loved one or without that significant loss that we've experienced, we get stuck and we're trapped. And often we do a lot more damage to other people, to our relationships, and most importantly, often to ourselves, because we struggle to accept this new reality. And I think what I was really convicted by was just looking at like what Barry Allen is willing to sacrifice to go back to spend more time with his mom. And in the movie version, he doesn't have a lot. Yes, he's been with the Justice League. He's saved the world. He knows Batman and Superman and all of these characters. But in some of the other stories, like the CW version, for instance, he has this amazing relationship with Iris. He has this amazing adoptive father who loves him and cares for him. He has this great career. And most importantly, he's used what he's been through to make a big difference in the lives of a lot of other people. And all of that would be wiped away if he went back in time to try to fix or change what had happened. And I just think about my own life. I think about my wife. I'm now a father, and I would be erasing that entire timeline if I had my own flashpoint event and went back into time so I could change the events of the past just to spend more time with my mom. What Barry ultimately learns through this story is that he's wanting one more time with her, but ultimately he learns that in order for me to continue to live my life going forward, I have to accept that this is a part of me. One of the powerful things about the movie The Flash is that Bruce Wayne and Batman essentially talks to him and says, I know what that pain is like. I lost both my parents in a tragic way, just like you did. And they have this bond over this loss. But he says, but that pain, those scars are a part of who I am today. And I don't know who I would be without that. So as much as I would love to have my parents back, I've also accepted that I am who I am because of going through that experience. And I wouldn't trade that for the world, even though I would love to have them back in my life. And I think that's something that we need to really kind of process, because if we're stuck and we're longing for the past and we don't see a path forward, of course we're going to be in this place where we're always wanting what we don't have anymore. But it's impossible to build a new future and a new life until we come to that place of acceptance. And ultimately in this movie, Barry has the most powerful tool that he can have, which is his choice. He chooses to use his power to reset everything, to go back and say, you know what, I'm accepting that as much as I want my mom back in my life, I can't have her. And in doing so, I'm also accepting this responsibility I have now with these incredible powers to do something with, knowing that this experience, despite how painful and traumatic it is my way of putting my thumbprint on the world around me, using this experience I've been through to invest in the lives of other people around me. And I think that's a story that we can all relate with. I hope you found this video helpful. Again, it's something that I'm deeply passionate about, both the world of grief, but also the world of comic book movies. But there's a lot of stories that have been of lives and heroes that have been touched by grief. And if this is something that you'd be interested in seeing future videos on or things like that, I host a podcast called Cinema Sessions. Myself and my co-host Kayla dive into different movies. We don't always cover just grief. We cover a lot of different topics. But if you're interested in more conversations and more content like this, check out our podcast, Cinema Sessions. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, or any other platform. Thanks for making some time to watch this video. We'll see you next time.